Over the years, there have been a number of grueling sporting contests that have lasted several hours or even days, often with extraordinary consequences for the competitors involved. In the video today, we're looking at 10 of the most famous examples. Number 10. Football, the American variety, Kansas City Chiefs versus Miami Dolphins, Arkansas versus Kentucky. Total time, 82 minutes and 40 seconds of game time, 4 hours and 55 minutes. During the regular season in the NFL, football games are allowed to end in ties, so all the great marathon games happen post-season. The most famous example, Christmas Day 1971, when the Kansas City Chiefs and the Miami Dolphins squared off in an AFC divisional playoff game. The game was a back-and-forth battle that went to overtime when the Chiefs missed a chip-in field goal with only seconds left on the clock. The game went into overtime and tied 24-24, but after an extra quarter, both teams remained stymied. It was only in the second overtime that the Dolphins kicker Gary Yepremian converted a 37-yard kick to give Miami the win. The game, that has since been dubbed the NFL's longest day, produced some amazing stats. Perhaps the most impressive numbers belonged to Kansas City's running back Ed Laak, who gained 350 all-purpose yards. College football overtimes aren't sudden death, and this often sets the stage for multiple overtime games, the most famous of which is a game between Arkansas and Kentucky from 2003. The game was tied 24-24 at the end of regulation, and it took a full 7 overtimes before Arkansas finally won 71-68. 5 players ended up with multiple touchdowns, and the teams combined for over 1,000 yards of offense. Number 9. Chess. Ivan Nicolic versus Goran Arsovic. Total time, 20 hours 15 minutes. It's theoretically possible for a chess match to go on for 5,949 moves, but such a feat seems unlikely when you consider that the longest chess game on record only included 269 moves and still lasted over 20 hours. The game took place in Belgrade in 1989 between Ivan Nicolic and Goran Arsovic. After nearly a day of play, only 5 pieces remained on the board. Nicolic had his king, a bishop, and a rook, while Arsovic had only his king and a rook. But after nearly 100 moves with no change, the match was finally declared a draw. This obscenely long match helped lead the World Chess Federation to institute the 50-move rule, which states that a game can be declared a draw as soon as each player has made 50 moves without capturing one of his opponent's pieces. This means that the record set in Nicolic versus Arsovic is unlikely to ever be broken. Number 8. Poker. Phil Laak. Total time, 115 hours. Gambling law is filled with stories of poker games that went on for days. But the longest live game on record was when professional card shark Phil Laak played live poker at the Bellagio Casino in Las Vegas for over 115 hours. Other than a 5-minute break every hour, Laak managed to stay at the table nearly non-stop for almost 5 days, shattering the previous record of 72 hours set by Larry Olmsted in 2004. Laak, who's known as the Unabomber because of his trademark hooded sweatshirts, claimed to stay sharp doing yoga and adhering to a strict diet in the weeks prior to his record attempt. He also swore that he did not use any caffeine or other stimulants to help him stay awake, even though he only took a 30-minute nap one time during the entire ordeal. Amazingly, after 115 hours of nearly uninterrupted play, Laak had still managed to cash out $6,766 in winnings. Number 7. Cricket. England versus South Africa. Total time, 43 hours 16 minutes. It might come as a surprise to most Americans, but cricket has produced some of the most absurdly long contests in sports history. Depending on the rules, a game is only over once one side has scored more runs and dismissed all of the opponent's batsmen, but most modern cricket matches allow for a draw to be called after a certain amount of time has elapsed. This was once not the case with Test match cricket, the more grueling version of the game played by international teams. Test matches are usually scheduled for at least 5 days, at which point the highest scoring team is declared the winner. In some of the early tests, cricket was played in the same timeless style as baseball, which allowed for matches to go on indefinitely until one team won it all. This is exactly what happened in 1939 in Durban, South Africa, when England and South Africa competed in what is now known as the longest test. This match started on March the 3rd and continued on for a further 9 days. 2 off days and a rain day were also included. After this time, no team was able to close things out. By the 12th day, England was poised to take the win with a record 654 runs, but the match had to be called off in order for the English players to catch their boat ride back home. It was only then that the longest test was finally declared a draw. Number 6. Boxing. Harry Sharpe versus Frank Crosby. Total time, 5 hours, 3 minutes, 43 seconds for 76 rounds. Anyone who's ever boxed can tell you just how physically taxing of a sport it is, so it's amazing to discover that there have been fights that managed to go on for several hours. One of the most notable is a match that took place in 1892 between Harry Sharpe and Frank Crosby. At just over 5 hours, this brutal contest is the longest knockout fight to ever be held under modern boxing rules. The match took place in Illinois and was said to be a dead-even fight, to the point that it wasn't even until the 76th round that both men finally knocked each other down simultaneously. Crosby supposedly hit his head on the ground hard, and even though he was able to get to his feet, Sharpe knocked him out only a few minutes later. At a total time of 5 hours, 3 minutes and 45 seconds, the Crosby-Sharpe fight is one of the longest bouts of all time. It proved to be so long, in fact, that the referee didn't even last the full duration. Supposedly, the fight's ref was fighting a cold and taking the occasional pull from a flask of liquor. According to boxing law, the man passed out on the 65th round, leaving Sharpe and Crosby to fight their last 12 rounds with no one officiating. Number 5. Baseball. Rochester Red Wings versus Pawtucket Red Sox. Total time 33 innings for nearly 9 hours. The longest recorded professional baseball game took place in 1981 between the Pawtucket Red Sox and the Rochester Red Wings, two AAA clubs. The game started at around 8 p.m. on April the 18th and continued on into the early morning of Easter Sunday, with the score deadlocked at 2-2. Despite the fact that both a young Wade Boggs and Cal Ripken Jr. were among the players on the field, hits were extremely hard to come by, and the game was finally suspended by the league presidents just after 4 a.m. Of the 2,000-plus fans that had started the night, only 19 remained, and each one was given season tickets by the Pawtucket's team owner. Amazingly, the game was not resumed for another 65 days, the next time the Red Wings were in town, and when it was finally restarted, it had become front-page news around the country. Over 5,000 fans packed the stadium to see the end of the longest game of all time. Unfortunately, the game ended rather anticlimactically. After just 1 inning and 18 minutes of play, Pawtucket player Dave Koza hit a weak single to left field, sending teammate Marty Barrett home to score the winning run in the bottom of the 33rd inning. The game has since gone down in baseball lore as one of the most famous professional contests of all time. It is featured in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and in 2006 the Pawtucket Red Sox had a celebration to commemorate the 25th anniversary of their legendary win. Number 4. Hockey. Detroit Red Wings versus Montreal Maroons. Total time 176 minutes and 30 seconds. Hockey games usually avoid turning into marathon competitions because, depending on the league, games either resort to a shootout after an overtime period or simply end in a draw. This is the case in the NHL, save for one key exception: the Stanley Cup playoffs. During the postseason, games will continue to go into 20-minute overtime periods until a goal is scored in open play. This has made for some epic contests over the years, the most famous of which took place in a 1936 semifinal game between the Detroit Red Wings and the Montreal Maroons. After 3 20-minute periods of regulation play, neither team had managed to find a goal, so the game went into overtime. The defense struggle continued, and the players managed to go scoreless for 5 full 20-minute periods of overtime. Both teams were nearly dead on their feet when Detroit's Mud Brunetto, a rookie who'd only been playing professionally for 2 weeks, scored a miracle goal 16 minutes into the 6th overtime. When all was said and done, the total game time was 176 minutes, 116 of it being overtime. That's nearly the equivalent of 3 back-to-back games. Number 3. Basketball. Rochester Royals versus the Indianapolis Olympians. Syracuse versus UConn. Total time 6 overtimes for 3 hours and 46 minutes. It might be surprising to hear that the longest NBA game on record ended with a score of 75-73, but that's exactly what happened in 1951 when the Indianapolis Olympians bested the Rochester Royals after 6 overtimes. Perhaps not surprisingly, the contest wasn't the most exciting game ever witnessed. Supposedly, there were only 26 shots over the course of the entire 6 overtimes, and most of the fans had left before the game finally ended. A more modern marathon basketball game occurred when Syracuse and UConn played out a 6 overtime contest during the Big East tournament. The game lasted nearly 4 hours, and it wasn't until 1:30 in the morning that Syracuse finally managed to win the game, 127-117. The stats from the game, they were incredible. Not only did the team score a combined 244 points, but over 100 of them came in overtime. 6 players managed to get double-doubles, and even more than that fouled out over the course of the 6 overtimes. Amazingly, Syracuse v. UConn isn't even the longest game in college history. That distinction goes to a game between Cincinnati and Bradley from 1981, which managed to go into 7 overtimes. That game was before college basketball used a shot clock, so even though it was longer, the Syracuse-UConn was definitely a more significant and physically grueling event. Number 2. Tennis. Isner versus Mahut. Total time 11 hours and 5 minutes. This clash between John Isner and Nicolas Mahut is certainly one of the most famous tennis matches of all time. The American Isner and the Frenchman Mahut began their match on the early evening of June the 22nd. Both players started strong, and the match was tied at 2 sets each when it had to be suspended due to darkness. Day 2 of the contest started with the 5th set, but after 12 games, the players remained tied at 6-6. Any other set would have been settled by a tiebreak, but the rules state that in the 5th set, players must continue to play until a player wins by 2 games. Incredibly, neither man could break the other man's serve, and after over 118 games of extra play, the match remained deadlocked. Play was again suspended for darkness shortly after the 9-hour mark, only to resume the next morning. After a further 20 games, Isner finally managed to break Mahut's serve and went on to win the match with 2 expertly placed passing shots. The Isner-Mahut match broke a number of tennis records. Not only did it smash the record for the longest match in history at 11 hours and 15 minutes, the previous record was only a little more than half of this, but Isner also broke the record for the most aces in a match with 113. Both men were also visibly exhausted by the time the marathon match finally ended, and a doctor has since predicted that both men might suffer tendinitis and some physical ailments as a result of this ordeal. With that in mind, it's probably not surprising that Isner went on to lose to his next opponent in straight sets. Number 1. Boxing. Andy Bowen versus Jack Burke. Total time 7 hours and 19 minutes. 11 hours of tennis is certainly grueling, but it's got nothing on 7+ hours of the pure physical punishment that is boxing. The longest boxing match on record took place in New Orleans on April 6, 1893, between Andy Bowen and Jack Burke. They stepped into the ring in hopes of claiming the lightweight title, which had been left open thanks to the retirement of the previous champion. At the time, boxing was still enough of an underground sport that there was no such thing as a judge's decision. One fighter had to be knocked out or throw in the towel before the contest could be considered over. This rule set the stage for the most brutal boxing match of all time. Burke and Bowen clashed, and in what was considered to be a fairly even fight, they proceeded to beat on one another for 110 3-minute rounds. By the time the bell sounded for the 111th, over 7 hours had passed, and both men were so punch-drunk that they couldn't even step out of their corners. Seeing that things were getting out of hand, the referee finally declared the bout a no contest. By that point, the epic match had already taken a severe toll on both of the fighters. Burke had broken every bone in his hands, and he proceeded to go into semi-retirement. Bowen, meanwhile, was killed in the ring in his very next fight. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Also, don't forget to subscribe. We've got brand new videos just like this every day of the week. If you're looking for more from me though, why not check out my other channel called Biographics. We do biographies of notable people from history as well as the present day. Find that linked to below. And as always, thank you for watching.